Now, I'm not quite sure there is anything worse in football than the international break. It is 2 weeks of just pointless games. It's only 3 weeks into the season. Why are we having a break from the Premier League already when it has only just begun? I'm not having any of it, so I'm going to make this video talking about Tottenham, and I want to keep it as positive as I can because I think 3 games into a season, a lot of people are getting a little bit too worked up with some of the results that Tottenham have had. A little bit too much negativity, may I say. Of course, some of it is justified and there are a lot of problems at Tottenham that need solving over the next few weeks if we are going to progress and move up the table and go far in cup competitions under Ange Postecoglou this season. But for me, looking at it and looking at the first 3 games of the seasons, I actually see a lot of positives. So this is what this video is going to be about. I want to talk about the positives to do with Tottenham Hotspur so far this season. I've seen plenty of signs that we are going to be just fine this year. Now, expectations are understandably high because Tottenham went on an incredible run at the start of last season. We're going undefeated in the first 10 games. We were sitting top of the table. Everything was nice and cushy. But in the second half of the season, things kind of fell apart because we had a lot of injuries and perhaps teams were starting to figure us out a little bit. This season, it almost feels like it's going in reverse a little bit. It feels like we're struggling at the start of the season and hopefully we will start to pick it up as the games go on. Look, if it takes 5 or 6 or 7 games to get firing in the final third and start scoring goals and being more clinical in the final third, I will absolutely take it, because if it means we are then consistent for the rest of the season and on form and heading into the second half of the season in a really strong place, I would rather have that in the second half than in the first half, because that's where the important games are, that's where the cup competitions are, and for me as a Tottenham fan, that's a priority, making sure we are on the best form when those cup competitions come around, especially the Europa League. So you might be sat there thinking, well Mitch, what is positive about Tottenham at the moment? You know, we've lost one of our 3 opening games, we drew the first one against Leicester and we beat a very poor Everton side at home. Well, for me, there's a lot of positives to take from the football that Tottenham have been playing so far in the 2024-25 campaign. Let's start with the fact that Tottenham have been completely dominant in all 3 games, okay? Put the goals and the results aside for 1 second and have a look at how the patterns of play and how the games have actually gone. Tottenham have dominated. They've been on top of every opponent. We've now played a decent opponent in Newcastle at St James's Park and we were completely on top of them for the entire game. The same can be said against Leicester. The same can be said against Everton. Obviously, in the 2 games that we did drop points, we were a bit frail defensively. We got caught out because we didn't take our chances. That's an issue for another time. That's an issue that hopefully Ange and the boys will work on over the international break, and we just perhaps need that little bit of sharpness in the final third to get the goals flowing, and we need the return of our striker, of course, in Dominic Solanke. It's always difficult when you don't have your striker fit and available. It's going to be harder to score goals. I think that's a natural conclusion to come to. Over the 3 games so far this season, Tottenham have averaged 69% possession over the 3. So, you know, even in some of these games, we've had even more than that. Against Leicester and against Everton, I'm pretty sure we had 70% plus of the ball, which is just, you know, it's an improvement upon last season. Ange loves to control and dictate the tempo of play. He loves to be camped in the opposition's half, and we are seeing that a lot more already this season. Last season, we were perhaps a bit naive, we were a bit frail, we opted to sit back quite a lot and maybe be a bit more defensive, and that's because of the managers that we've had in the past, the culture that's been imprinted on the club. But under Ange, he has slowly been trying to change this, and I think he's succeeding. Goals that we've conceded have been completely against the run of play, and as I say, that's a problem for Ange to work out and figure out how we prevent those things. I think we rely a lot on the pace of Mickey van der Ven covering up those loose balls, and we know that against Newcastle we didn't have it, so we can perhaps put their second goal down to that. But that brings me on to another point. You know, you go away to Newcastle, St James's Park, a ground that we are historically really poor at, really bad, without 2 of our key players in Dominic Solanke, the player we're expecting to score 15 to 20 goals for Tottenham this season, and Mickey van der Ven, our sweeper, one of our best, if not our best defenders at the moment, cleaning up in behind, keeping track of the pace of Barnes, Gordon, Isak. We didn't have him against Newcastle, and you can bet that he would have made a huge difference considering how high of a line we were playing and how Newcastle loved to just chip the ball in behind the defence and release their wingers. To be able to go to Tyneside and dominate a game in the way that we did, it shows improvement to me. Last season we got embarrassed, and the season before that we got embarrassed. It was horrible to watch, but this season it was different. Okay, perhaps Newcastle are missing players as well, and perhaps they're not as good as they were 2 seasons ago, but it doesn't matter. Go into a hostile environment and dominating the play. There are not many teams in the Premier League that can do that. Obviously, we were missing the final piece of the puzzle in the final third, but the basics and the foundations, I think, were positive in that sense. Just to put it into context, in our 2 away games so far this season, we've had 35 shots. We had 20 shots against Newcastle on Sunday. I know we only scored 1 goal, and it just links back to the point I said about missing our striker. You know, Heung-min Son, Dejan Kulusevski, okay, they can perhaps do a job against the lesser teams like we saw against Everton, but against the tough teams away from home, it's always going to be a lot more difficult. So to still be able to fashion those shots and fashion those chances in the final third, for me, again, I'm taking it as a positive sign. Once the goals start going in and we get that confidence level in front of goal and making those decisions sharper and more correct in the final third, we will start scoring a lot more goals, I promise you. It may not have been the case against Leicester and Newcastle, but against Everton, we showed that we can be clinical, we can be ruthless, we do have it in us. Okay, again, we're not doing it on a consistent basis just yet, but that's all right. I would rather get that out of the way at the start of the season. We're only 3 games into the season. It's not the end of the world at the moment. We will have to be ruthless and clinical if we want to beat Arsenal. The same against West Ham, the same against Manchester United in the tough games that are coming up. But even without Solanke against Everton, we managed to score 4 goals. Yes, it could have been even more. Yes, Everton were really poor, but we still did it. We still stuck the ball in the net 4 times. We are missing that sharpness and that hunger to be in the final third and to be in the box and get into the right positions. That's what we spent £65 million on Solanke for. Whether we like it or not, whether we can sit here and say, oh yeah, well, you know, we should still be doing better without Solanke, and, you know, Solanke wasn't available, so we have to do something else. Okay, I get it. But it's a £65 million striker, and he will be in those correct positions. Andrew's spoken so highly of Solanke and the impact that he expects him to have. When he is back, when he was fit, we saw it against Leicester. He got into all the right positions. He was just lacking that little bit of sharpness. And sometimes it takes a few games into the season to be able to correct that and get up to the level needed to win games in the Premier League. Patterns and the chance creation is there. I think Yves Bissouma has been really, really good so far this season. All of the drama and the stuff that was online aside, I think he's been really impressive in that deep line midfield role. And although we were all frustrated that we didn't sign a new traditional number 6, I actually think Bissouma's doing a very, very good job at the moment and is a capable player to be able to play that role across the whole season. He's looked definitely back to himself like he did in those first games in the Premier League season last year before he got sent off. And let's just hope this time that Andrew will be able to get consistency out of him for the whole season, because if he does, we've got a very, very good player operating in midfield. James Maddison has looked a lot sharper. Pedro Porro is getting into some ridiculously good positions all across the pitch, across the entire game. Mickey van der Ven looks phenomenal, as usual. If we can keep him fit for a long period across the season, again, I think we're going to be just fine. I know we've only really had one tough test against Newcastle, and it's another big one against Arsenal after the international break. But with those players playing, hopefully with Van der Ven back and Solanke back fit, we will have our strongest 11 available for us, and I think we will be much better for it. I want to be positive about this season. I don't want to sit here and lose all hope and all faith after 3 games in the season. And look, I'm not having a go at people that perhaps are a little bit frustrated and annoyed at the club, perhaps because of their transfer business or because of how the way that we've been playing in the first few games of the season. You are all entitled to your opinion, and that is absolutely fine. I have no problem with it. But for me personally, I spent so many years as a Tottenham fan getting so frustrated and so angry at things. I've decided to flip my mentality this season. The transfer window is closed, and I am choosing to completely get behind the boys, behind the manager, believe in the philosophy and believe that things will come good. Andrew's only had a year building this project. He's only been in charge of Tottenham for a year. Second season is a long way to go yet until the end of the season. You know, 30 plus games still. So much time to improve and prove to people that we are a better team than we were last season. And for me, the signs point to the fact that we probably are better than we were last season. The end of last season was pretty poor for our standards, losing a lot of games, dropping a lot of points. The play wasn't great, albeit we were missing a lot of key players. But I know Andrew's worked incredibly hard over the summer to try and remedy those, implement different and new tactics and styles onto the team to try and get them up the table and competitive in every game that that we play. And we can't say that we haven't been competitive in any of the games we've played. We have, and we will be against Arsenal. Okay, we might not be at that level yet, but, you know, Mikel Arteta's been in charge for 5+ years at Arsenal, and, you know, it's only for the last 2, really, that they've been at that level to compete with Manchester City. So we just have to remember, sometimes things take time, and it's frustrating. We're sat here, we want to win now, we know that. But we tried it with Conte, we tried it with Mourinho, it didn't work, and I think Ange's improved us. We play much better football, much more attractive football, a better style of play, we create more chances, we are on the front foot, it's everything we have been crying out for in the last 3 or 4 years. Yes, there are still things missing, but we have to have faith and trust that they're going to be remedied sooner rather than later. Of course, if we get to Christmas time and we're sitting in the bottom half of the table, we've been dumped out of the Carabao Cup and we're doing poor in the Europa League, you come back and you assess. But 3 games in, heading into an international break, I think it might be good for us to all sit and reset and refresh our mindset and our mentality for when we come back, because we have a really tough run. The players and the team are going to need us behind them, especially in those home games. I just wanted to use this video as an opportunity to send across a positive message, because I've actually been quite happy with how we've played in the game so far, albeit frustrated at the results like everybody else. I am fully on the side that the goals will start coming, and when they do, we are going to be an incredibly good team. Results like this happen at the start of the season. We've seen it with almost every team so far. You know, Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, all dropping points. So it is not the end of the world. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please hit the like button if you have, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can also join as a member if you really want to, but of course, no pressure to do so. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the international break. I'll be back with some more videos across the 2 weeks. And as always, come on you Spurs.